Fred Lewis had one shot, and everyone in Montana knew it. For months, rival miners mocked his approach, dismissed his theories, and watched him from a distance, convinced he was chasing a fool's dream. But this morning, deep in the frost-covered hills, Fred unearthed something no one thought was real. A gold vein so massive, it could change everything. The ground seemed to shudder with each strike of the pickaxe. Even the wind paused. Every swing mattered. Every decision counted. And in the distance, hidden by shadows and trees, competitors watched in silence, waiting for him to slip up. What they didn't know was that Fred wasn't just digging for gold. He was on the verge of rewriting history. By the time night fell, Montana would never be the same again. If you want to witness the wildest gold strike this state has ever seen, hit like and subscribe, because this is just the beginning. Montana's mountains have always kept secrets. Abandoned mines, whispered legends of forgotten riches, and one elusive motherlode that locals called the Lost Streak. Fred came chasing that legend with nothing but grit, a couple of weathered maps, and the kind of instinct only years of chasing fading dreams could sharpen. People in town talked about him, some skeptical, some intrigued, sharing stories in low voices over beers and pool tables. Satellite images hinted at unusual underground formations. Old mining records pointed to hidden veins, thought to be unreachable or long tapped out. Undeterred, Fred pulled together a tight, trusted crew, a team of hardened men who believed in his vision. Together, they moved like ghosts through Montana's unforgiving terrain, always careful to stay off rival radars. Every mile deeper felt electric. Every rock overturned hinted at the treasure below. And Fred knew, sooner or later, his patience would uncover something no one could ignore. Words spread like wildfire. Fred had staked a claim near the old Black Rock mine, a site abandoned for decades, dismissed by others as cursed or barren. Suddenly, other miners started watching his every move, trying to predict his strategy. Strange fires and equipment failures followed, signs that not everyone wanted to see him succeed. But Fred stayed one step ahead, calm, focused, reading his competitors like a poker hand and using their ambition against them. Then came the breakthrough. In a forgotten corner of a small town library, Fred found an old miner's diary, yellowed, brittle, filled with cryptic notes. The entries described hidden veins, precise coordinates, and warnings about unstable ground. Symbols and sketches suggested there was still gold buried deep in the hills, waiting for someone brave and clever enough to reach it. Fred studied every detail, plotting a course that avoided dangers other men had feared. His crew felt the rising tension, the sense that something big was coming. But even they didn't realize just how big. A $30 million jackpot hidden beneath the very ground they stood on. When the time came, Fred chose to move under the cover of night. Silence was their ally. Surprise was their only protection. If their rivals found out too soon, the dream could be ripped away before the first nugget saw daylight. One by one, the crew slipped into the hills, tools in hand, every step rehearsed, every sound muffled. The excitement from that old diary pulsed in their veins like a second heartbeat. The only noises were metal scraping against rock and whispered instructions in the dark. As the crew dug deeper, flecks of gold began to glimmer under the moonlight. Brief flashes of a fortune waiting just inches away. The hills seemed to hold their breath again, echoing with the sharp crack of breaking stone. It was happening. Fred watched the exposed patterns in the rock, comparing them to the symbols from the miner's journal. Everything lined up. They were exactly where the lost streak was said to be. Far off in the shadows, the faint glow of other miners' lanterns flickered in the dark. Hunters stalking the same dream. But Fred was ready. He knew every move they'd make, every path they'd try. He wasn't just digging for gold. He was leading a quiet revolution, and Montana would never forget it. The night's excitement turned to sudden terror when a section of unstable rock gave way without warning. A shower of dust and stone came crashing down, trapping part of the crew and filling the tunnels with frantic shouts. Panic surged, but Fred's calm took over instantly, With sharp, clear commands, he directed his team, drawing on every ounce of experience to stabilize the collapse and pull the trapped men to safety. Just beyond the fallen debris, a hidden pocket of gold shimmered in the dim light, almost mocking their struggle. It was right there, almost within reach, yet still impossible to touch. And then, in the distance, the rumble of engines cut through the night. Fred's rivals were closing in. Their desperation was clear, greed driving them to recklessly chase the same prize Fred had nearly uncovered. Heartbeats quickened. The crew knew they had no choice now. They had to act fast and risk everything, or watch their hard-won discovery fall into someone else's hands. But as they pushed forward, the greatest danger shifted. It was no longer the mountain they had to fear, but the men coming to steal from it. Emboldened by the chaos, rival miners made a bold move. They attempted to raid the site, to steal gear, maybe even wrest the claim out from under Fred. But they were too late, and Fred was ready. Every tunnel had been carefully mapped, decoys laid, tripwires hidden, silent alarms set. Cameras tucked into the shadows captured every approach, every move. This wasn't just a dig site anymore. It was a fortress built on strategy. The rivals walked straight into the traps. Misdirected by false trails, fooled by clever illusions, they stumbled, confused and outplayed. One by one, they fell back in defeat, their plans crumbling as quietly as they'd crept in. Fred's crew didn't gloat, but quiet laughter passed between them. It wasn't mockery, it was relief, adrenaline, the thrill of surviving something bigger than gold. The hills seemed to pulse around them, alive with the promise of something massive just beneath their feet. Every swing of the pickaxe brought them closer. Every carefully planned step narrowed the distance between them and the motherlode, the culmination of years of rumors, maps, and near mythical tales. The gold veins were thickening now, gleaming brighter, hinting at untold wealth just inches away. Fred's mind raced, balancing safety, speed, and the raw excitement of what they were uncovering. He knew the rivals would be back, but he also knew the terrain. The mountain secrets were his to unlock first. The crew moved with precision, like a well-oiled machine. Each man knew his role. Each understood that one mistake could cost them everything. Time faded away. Night stretched on into a blur of sweat, dust, and gleaming rock. But with every obstacle conquered, their determination only grew stronger. They dug deeper, following the shimmering veins as if the gold itself was calling them, guiding them through a maze of stone and silence. Every close call with a collapse, every avoided trap, added to the growing feeling that this was fate. They were close now. Nothing but disaster could stop them. Fred's eyes were locked in, his focus razor sharp. Every decision, every risk taken brought them closer to the breakthrough they'd all been working for. Even as rival miners regrouped in the distance, their presence now a shadow looming on the edge of the hills, Fred's team pressed on, undeterred. Hidden cameras confirmed every movement outside. Traps stayed active. The tunnels were now a battleground, but Fred had turned them into a fortress. And in the heart of it all, the gold gleamed like frozen lightning, veins twisting through the rock, breathtaking and dangerous all at once. The collapse, the sabotage, the long night. Each had been a test. Each had refined the crew's instincts, tightened their unity, and sharpened their resolve. And at the center of it all was Fred, his leadership steady, his vision clear. Guided by him, they moved deeper still, into the very heart of Montana's mystery. The air was thick with tension, hands trembling not with fear, but anticipation. They were about to uncover a fortune, not just in gold, but in legend. Every strike of the pickaxe echoed through the mountain, each flash of gold a tantalizing promise. The flicker of rival headlamps in the dark reminded them just how close they were to either fortune or failure. They moved quickly, not just from ambition, but from a primal sense of survival. The mountain was unforgiving, demanding not only muscle, but respect and a sharp mind. Fred Lewis kept a mental tally of every risk and backup plan, weighing the thrill of discovery against the danger of a misstep in a place where greed could get a man killed. As the first light of dawn crept over the peaks, the crew had already pushed past booby traps, survived cave-ins, and outsmarted sabotage. The gold veins they uncovered ran thick and luminous, calling to them from deep inside the rock. Everyone on that crew felt it in their bones. They were standing at the edge of something historic. Fred glanced around at his men, their faces smeared with dirt and sweat, eyes lit with a fierce determination. In their expressions, he saw the same fire that had driven him for years. The strategies, the waiting, the relentless risks. It was all coming together in this single, electrifying moment. Montana's buried heart was finally opening, revealing a treasure long hidden and nearly within reach, an estimated $30 million jackpot. Then, as if the mountain itself had finally decided to relent, a tremor passed through the rock. Dust fell like snow from the ceiling. A faint golden glow spilled from a hidden chamber, just exposed behind a crumbling wall. Every man froze, breath caught, heart pounding. This was the moment they had chased for years, through ridges, through tunnels, through endless setbacks. Now, discovery was no longer just a dream. Inside the newly revealed chamber, gold veins wound through the stone like lightning frozen in time. Fred stood at the entrance, heart hammering in his chest, eyes taking in the glowing passage ahead. The veins pulsed faintly under the flickering lights of their headlamps, alive in a way that made the treasure feel less like wealth and more like legend. It was staggering, roughly $30 million in untouched Montana gold. Every ounce represented strategy, resilience, and the nerve to pursue a vision others had mocked. The crew stepped carefully, knowing the wrong move could bring the whole cavern down and bury years of sacrifice beneath a fatal mistake. As they worked, Fred reached out and let his hand hover over one of the golden veins. A rare smile crossed his face, fleeting but genuine. This was the culmination of endless nights, near misses, and precision planning. The gold was real, and it was theirs. But it wouldn't stay a secret for long. Word spread faster than Fred expected. By mid-morning, rumors swept through mining towns and camps like wildfire. No one had seen this coming. Not here, not now. Rival crews scrambled to rework their maps and recheck their claims, panic simmering beneath their disbelief. In cafes and bars, the air buzzed with talk of a once-lost vein, now unearthed by the most unlikely of men. Stories flew. Ghost gold hidden in forgotten tunnels, buried for decades. Some miners spoke of lawsuits and legal battles, threats of ownership disputes. Others fantasized about following Fred's path, hoping lightning might strike twice. But Fred said nothing. He let the gold do the talking. He knew that in a world where wealth breeds envy, discretion was worth more than any headline. Still, with fame came risk. Opportunists began to circle. Rival crews, poachers, and thieves drawn by whispers of a prize too rich to ignore. Fred responded with the kind of discipline only a former soldier could manage. Security tightened overnight. Hidden cameras recorded every approach. Dogs patrolled the perimeter. Night watches stood guard, silent and watchful. Fred wasn't just protecting gold. He was guarding the years of sacrifice that had led here. This wasn't just a strike. It was the moment that would define everything. Even as they pulled shimmering nuggets from the earth, the mountain never stopped reminding them who was in charge. The ground was unstable, the shafts unpredictable, and the threats constant. Sudden shifts in the earth, hidden water flows, even wildlife wandering too close. What seemed like a simple tunnel could become a death trap in seconds. Fred couldn't help but reflect on the cost of greed. Men who had wagered everything for lesser hauls and never returned. Now, every decision carried weight. One wrong step could mean the end, not just of the mission, but of lives. For Fred and his team, the $30 million in gold represented far more than money. It was survival. It was the culmination of strategy, discipline, and the belief that even Montana's wildest places could be tamed with enough will. The crew worked with silent synchronization, responding to Fred's every instruction with practiced precision. They weren't just digging, they were orchestrating. Each nugget was removed with care, hands steady, even as loose rock threatened to collapse around them. Every glittering piece they pulled free felt like both a victory and a warning, a reminder of how delicate their position truly was. The gold veins pulsed underfoot, glowing like a map to both riches and danger. The deeper they went, the more alive the mountain felt. Every flicker of shadow, every creak of stone demanded full attention. Even the sound of pickaxes striking rock carried dual meaning. It could signal success or the first sign of disaster. The tension was constant, almost unbearable. But the prize was too great to abandon. Above ground, the world was shifting just as quickly. Rumors were turning into tall tales. In nearby towns, conversations grew fevered as speculation spread like wildfire. Miners guessed wildly about the claim's location, the depth of the gold, the sheer impossibility of Fred's success. Town councils argued over potential land rights. Lawyers began circling, ready to pounce. Rival crews paced their camps, wondering if they'd underestimated the man who now seemed to have outmaneuvered them all. But Fred stayed silent, moving in the shadows of his success, extracting and securing the gold while the chaos outside spun out of control. The contrast was jarring. Underground, it was all calculated effort, slow, steady, and exact. Above ground, it was panic, envy, and scrambling greed. And back below, the threats didn't stop. Poachers began to probe the claim's boundaries, sneaking through the night in hopes of slipping past security. But Fred had been ready. Cameras caught every movement. Alarms gave them no second chances. Some tried to get close to tunnel entrances, banking on distraction or oversight. But Fred's system left no blind spots. And as if the human threats weren't enough, the mountain itself remained a constant opponent. A thin layer of dust might hide a weak slab of stone, or a sudden underground spring might make a passageway collapse without warning. Every step had to be made with care. Fred knew by now, the mountain respected only those who respected it back. It punished arrogance. It destroyed the careless. Every gold nugget felt heavier than its size suggested, burdened with the story of risk, near misses, and survival. As he moved through the tunnels, Fred studied his crew. Their faces were streaked with dirt, their eyes narrowed with focus, their bodies coated in sweat. And yet, in their silence and discipline, there was a quiet pride. They all understood the gravity of the moment. This was no ordinary strike. This was legacy. One mistake could unravel everything. But even under threat of collapse, sabotage, and envious rivals just over the ridgeline, they pressed on, extracting, reinforcing, protecting what they had earned. Fred walked the veins like a general surveying a battlefield. His fingers brushed along glittering walls of gold as he mentally mapped every inch, the richest deposits, the unstable pockets, the safe zones. He could feel it, the heartbeat of the mountain beneath his boots. This land had tested him like no other. Patience had been rewarded. Strategy had paid off. But the challenge wasn't over. Outside, the towns buzzed with theories and tension. Rivals watched, opportunists waited. But inside the cavern, Fred remained focused. There was still gold to claim, and a legacy to protect. One careful step at a time. Underground, the truth of the jackpot was no longer rumor or speculation. It was real, radiant, and within reach. Every decision mattered. Every movement had weight. As night fell, the first piles of extracted gold shimmered like captured sunlight, their brilliance matched only by their significance. This wasn't just about wealth. It was about survival, skill, and the hard-earned triumph of those who had dared to challenge the mountain. The crew had faced cave-ins, sabotage, and the constant threat of environmental disaster. And yet, here they stood, not simply victorious because of the gold, but because they had endured it all. They had outwitted rivals, survived the mountain's wrath, and honored its perilous rules. Fred allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction, a fleeting smile in the dust-filled glow of the cavern. knowing that with each careful extraction, they were moving closer to securing the full $30 million jackpot. Even as the shadows stretched long and rival crews regrouped above, Fred's focus never faltered. He watched every angle, tracked every potential threat, and monitored the environment with the precision of a tactician. The gold vein still pulsed under the miners' hands, alive, almost sentient, beckoning them forward while demanding absolute respect. This wasn't just about digging. It was a delicate balance, a dance between risk and reward, danger and discovery. The gold, the hazards, and the strategy were all entangled in a high-stakes game only the disciplined could play. Montana's hidden heart was finally giving up its secrets, but only to those bold and patient enough to claim them without falling victim to the mountain's many perils. The hours stretched deep into the night. Each handful of gold added to their fortune and to the pressure. Fred's leadership never wavered. His decisions were clear, his crew sharp and focused. They moved with purpose, unshaken by greed or sabotage, mindful of the mountain's ever-present dangers. Around them, Montana's wild spirit loomed, watching, testing, challenging their resolve. And yet, amid the tension, there was something else: exhilaration. They were on the brink of history. Every ounce secured was a victory over nature and man alike, a testament to strategy, patience, and unbreakable will. By the first light of dawn, the veins gleamed brighter, as if acknowledging their efforts. The cavern had become a golden labyrinth, echoing with the silent proof of months spent planning, risking, and daring. Montana's mountain still held secrets, but Fred and his team were beginning to unlock them, one steady extraction at a time. Outside, the world speculated and schemed, but down below, the truth belonged to them. The $30 million was no longer myth or legend. It was real, pulsing beneath frozen rock, waiting for the final phase of careful, calculated removal. With the stakes higher than ever, Fred shifted from awe to action. Each glint of gold wasn't just a reward, it was a signal to move. The team gathered quickly, mapping extraction routes, positioning equipment, and coordinating like a well-trained unit. The treasure was within reach, but the smallest error could unravel everything they'd built. Rival crews, collapsing stone, and human error were constant threats. Every man on Fred's team knew it. They moved with silent precision, executing a plan designed to stay hidden, efficient, and safe. Carts, pulleys, and motors had all been customized for stealth. This was no ordinary mining operation. It was a disciplined, high-level execution. Floodlights lit the cavern, revealing gold that glowed like fire caught in stone. Each nugget pulled from the earth was a triumph, not just over nature's cruelty, but over the reckless greed of competitors digging blindly elsewhere. Fred's operation stood in stark contrast: measured, thoughtful, strategic. Where others chased fortune recklessly, Fred and his team moved like surgeons. Every step was calculated. The placement of carts, the timing of lifts, the sequence of extractions, all of it meticulously planned to preserve safety, speed, and secrecy, ensuring the motherlode remained untouched by rival hands. By the next dawn, the first major hauls had been safely transported to hidden caches. The haul was nearly secure, a glowing testament to vision, restraint, and courage in a world where risk and deception often ruled the day. The jackpot was no longer a dream, it was a fact, and it had been earned, inch by inch, through discipline, patience, and fearless resolve. But the mountain still held its dangers, both from within and without. A rival crew, driven by desperation and greed, made one final, reckless push toward Fred's extraction site. Engines roared through the pre-dawn darkness. Voices shouted across the cold air as they stormed the terrain. But Fred had seen this coming. He had prepared decoys, rerouted paths, and used the natural lay of the land to mislead and delay any would-be intruders. Key tunnels had been reinforced. Narrow passageways funneled intruders into traps and dead ends. Hidden alarms tracked every movement. When the confrontation finally happened, it unfolded under the stark floodlights. Negotiations laced with tension, calculated bluffing, and bold maneuvers. Words were sharp, actions sharper. Each side probed for weakness, testing nerves and resolve. But Fred, calm and unshaken, followed his plan with surgical precision. By the time the standoff peaked, it was clear who had the upper hand. The rival crew had been completely outplayed, misled, cornered, and finally neutralized. They were forced to retreat, leaving Fred's gold untouched and his underground haul intact. As the hills of Montana fell quiet once again, the crew exhaled. The danger had passed, and in its place came a quiet, hard-earned triumph. With the threat behind them and the gold secure, the focus shifted toward what came next. Legacy. Fred Lewis, once a determined and underestimated prospector, had become a legend. His $30 million discovery wasn't just a financial windfall, it was history. A feat that would echo through mining camps and small-town saloons for generations to come. The celebration was modest, but meaningful. The crew shared in the satisfaction of what they'd accomplished, knowing they had been part of something extraordinary. Maps, journals, and extraction techniques, the very tools that had led them to the motherlode, were carefully stored away, hidden from prying eyes. Their secrecy was vital. Fred understood that knowledge, just like gold, was a treasure to be protected. Rival miners, stunned by what Fred had pulled off, were left in silent admiration and envy. They had underestimated him, but now they saw the truth. Brute ambition alone could never match what Fred had brought. Foresight, discipline, and the courage to trust in a long game, few were willing to play. The Montana wilderness returned to stillness. Its mountains, ancient and imposing, resumed their silence. A silence that hid many secrets, waiting for the next daring soul to uncover them. But one tale had carved itself into the legend of the land. The story of Fred Lewis, the man who outwitted rivals, tamed the mountain, and claimed a fortune with strategy and skill. Every step that had led to this moment had been calculated with painstaking precision. Underground shafts had been fortified, routes meticulously mapped, and the entire extraction process choreographed like a delicate ballet. The crew moved as one. No wasted words, no missteps. Each man knew his role and executed it flawlessly. A symphony of effort to secure a treasure that could vanish in an instant. In hidden caches, gold piled high. A breathtaking reminder of risk met with strategy, luck met with logic, and human ingenuity overcoming both nature and human opposition. Fred's eyes were always scanning, watching for structural weakness, signs of sabotage, or shifts in the mountain's breathing rhythm. The gold veins sparkled in the artificial light, glowing like frozen lightning. It was more than just wealth. It was the living result of years of research, sacrifice, and relentless ambition. Outside, Montana seemed to acknowledge what had happened. Birds took flight. The wind whispered through the ridgelines, and the sun crept over the peaks. Mountains that had seen countless men try and fail. But not this time. Fred's actions, his mind, and his execution had rewritten the rules of modern gold mining. Rivals, still tending their bruised egos and reworking failed plans in far-off camps, could only marvel at what he had done. With patience, precision, and sheer will, he had turned the odds to his favor. Every move, from deciphering ancient diaries and navigating treacherous terrain, to outmaneuvering sabotage and orchestrating flawless timing, had built to this: a perfect storm of discovery and security. Fred Lewis hadn't just struck gold, he'd earned it, every ounce. Fred Lewis's legacy wasn't just measured in gold, though the staggering $30 million haul would turn heads for generations. His true impact was etched into the mountain itself, a lasting lesson that vision, preparation, and boldness could shape even the harshest landscapes and outmaneuver the greediest of rivals. As the crew moved quietly among the hidden caches, each man understood how delicate their success truly was. Yet beneath the quiet, there was pride. A shared celebration of the mastery it took to make the impossible real. Montana's mountains still held countless secrets, but Fred had unlocked one of the greatest, and in doing so, crafted a story that would ripple through time, inspiring future miners, dreamers, and risk-takers to move forward with equal parts courage, caution, and strategy. Every ridge and tunnel now bore the fingerprints of meticulous planning and decisive action. Nothing had been left to chance. Every corner checked, every exit secured, every potential risk anticipated. What had once been a chaotic and dangerous quest for gold had been transformed into a high-precision operation. Nuggets gleamed in the dim floodlight glow, silent proof of human ingenuity and resilience under extreme pressure. It felt as though the mountain itself acknowledged their achievement. The gold veins, still gently pulsing beneath layers of stone, became a living testament to the fortune now safely in the hands of those who respected both its value and its volatility. Rivals who once scoffed or threatened were now forced to reevaluate everything. Fred's success had set a new standard, proving that reckless ambition could never rival strategy, discipline, and patience. Montana's hills would go on keeping their mysteries and dangers, always whispering promises of fortune. But Fred Lewis, through quiet mastery and relentless determination, had left a permanent mark on that unforgiving land. The gold was secured, the rivals were silenced, and the legend of the motherlode was now firmly tied to the name of a man who had claimed it with skill and precision. By the operation's final hours, the entire haul had been consolidated. Every ounce of gold was accounted for. Every cache was reinforced and expertly concealed. Fred's crew moved with practiced unity, as if part of a well-oiled machine. They knew their victory wasn't just about wealth. It was about survival, calculated risk, and unwavering focus. The challenges of the mountain had been met, the threats neutralized, and history carved into the bedrock of Montana's wild and dangerous heart. Each crew member understood what they had been part of. They had stood shoulder to shoulder at a moment that would be retold for decades to come, a testament to what humanity can achieve when strategy and courage collide. Against nature's fury and the schemes of envious rivals, Fred Lewis had emerged not just as a miner, but as a legend. A man whose daring, vision, and resolve had overcome everything thrown at him, from sabotage to shifting earth to the ever-present lure of greed. Montana's mountains would always keep their secrets. But one story of a $30 million jackpot and an extraordinary pursuit of gold would echo forever through those ridges. A story that reminds anyone brave enough to venture into the wild that audacity, preparation, and precision can unlock unimaginable treasures. In a land that has tested countless men and claimed many.